What's up, guys? It's Dakota, and it's been a while. I think probably about a month since I came up with a Pioneer deck list or a deck list that I really liked. So I figured I'd come in hot with some sweet, sweet Fires Super Friends. If you're familiar at all with the standard deck Fires of Invention, you'll know that this card is completely absurd and kind of busted in its own right. Not Oko amounts of busted, but definitely a card that is being abused in standard. And while not breaking the format, definitely making for some sweet interactions and the like. So Fires of Invention says that you can only cast spells during your turn, and you can cast no more than 2 spells each turn. And then you may cast spells with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana cost. So the basis around this deck is that you're a Jeskai deck, you're Jeskai Super Friends essentially, but like you have Fires of Invention to basically play 2 Planeswalkers a turn and just kind of beat your opponent by having these threats that are very hard for them to really beat. So, going through everything, Fave Wishes, and what kind of makes this deck sweet and kind of the same as like the standard variant. Fave Wishes has an adventure creature that has granted as its sorcery adventure spell that you can choose a non-creature card you own from outside of the game, reveal it, and put it to your hand. So starting with that, when you look at the sideboard here, there's a lot of like non-creature cards to get from the sideboard, and that's really just to kind of go with Fave Wishes as like your way of accessing your sideboard cards in the situations that you need them in. So with that being said, like Gyrie Sanitarium, I'm pretty sure the only reason why this is in the deck is because it plays 4 Narset Parter Avails, and you can just lock your opponent out of the game. Activate this card either on their upkeep. Where is it? Activate this on their upkeep. They draw a discard. They don't get to draw on their draw step. Easy enough. They never get to have a relevant spell ever again, and you either slowly mill them out, or I guess not even really mill them out, but like you just make sure that they don't have spells, and you beat them with like your Elspeth, Teferi, insert Planeswalker that you want to win with. You're going to win with it if you Gaia Reach Sanitarium plus Narset Parter Avails, lock them out. Authority just stunts really the aggro decks pretty heavily. Really good against mono red and basically anything wanting to get into the red zone. And of course, protecting your Planeswalkers for an additional turn. Pithing Needle to name your opponent's pesky Planeswalkers or annoying permanents that do things that you don't like. Rest in peace for the graveyard decks. Days Undoing, because again, Narset is a messed up magic card, and this card can easily leave your opponent with 1 card, you with a fresh 7, and just that alone, and then just being able to recycle the cards that you played, obviously, get your Planeswalkers and stuff back into your deck. Days Undoing just kind of like limits the amount of resources that your opponent gets while just totally maxing out and gassing you back up for your next turn when you have Fires out and you just cast a bunch of other difficult permanents that your opponent really can't deal with efficiently. Gideon's Intervention, basically giving you a Meddling Mage kind of effect while also preventing the damages from the name source, so you can name different creatures. If you don't want your opponent casting like Approach of the Second Sun, like Gideon's Intervention is a card that can deal with it. Supreme Verdict, uncounterable. Wrath of God, really powerful, as I've heard from against creature decks, and even possibly against like Elspeth sort of mirrors and stuff like that, where you can get ahead where you're making the tokens ahead of your opponents and so on and so forth. Both of Teferi double up those Planeswalker activations, even flickering something too. Possibility Storm, which is a weird card, which I'll actually go over in this video because I don't think a lot of people know what this card does, and like the really janky people probably know what this card does. So whenever a player casts a spell from his or her hand, that player exiles it, and then exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a card that shares a card type with it, and then that player casts that spell without paying its mana cost, and puts all the cards exiled with Possibility Storm to the bottom of the library in a random order. So basically, what this is saying is like if you cast a Deafening Clarion, you exile cards until you hit another sorcery, so you get another Deafening Clarion or Supreme Verdict. Enchantments, if you cast a Fires, either hit another fires or detention sphere. You cast a planeswalker, you can hit another planeswalker, so on and so forth. Things like that. So, really interesting card. There was even a Possibility Storm deck that was kind of floating around during the Invitational for the SCG Tour. So, another deck to possibly check out after checking this one out, because this one I think is really sweet. Planeswalker on the board, because why not? Sarkhan Masterless is pretty good in Standard. Probably deserves at least a chance as like a one-off in the sideboard. Casualties of War, just a really powerful card on its own. Obviously, you can't cast it from the way that your lands line up in the main deck, but this card also just blows your opponent away. I mean, it's a what is it? 5 for, it can be a 5-for-1. Like that's pretty good. 5-for-1s are really good from what I found out. Chandra, a planeswalker that has essentially Anger of the Gods without the exiling clause, a finisher and targeted removal for something bigger that the -3 can't take care of. Deploy the Gatewatch, a way just to like really put yourself in position to hit like Teferi plus Elspeth, or even Chandra, Torch of Defiance, and a Teferi Time Raveler is still really good with the Deploy the Gatewatch. And then our Revelation, that's a cheaper planar cleansing, or has the possibility of being a cheaper planar cleansing. So that's the sideboard, which usually we go over last, but like normally you're not bringing in any of these cards because Fae of Wishes is getting them from the sideboard. So really, the reason kind of why to play this deck, of course, as we went over Fire Invention, to play these insane, crazy cards, getting into the Trials, a win condition plus a way of just like making your opponent have to deal with Gideon. And kind of interesting that like Gideon of the Trials is the only Gideon in this deck, where you could play like 4-mana or Gideon Ally of Zendikar, and like you have this thing that makes tokens that's also a win condition, which also kind of makes your Gideon emblem a little bit better if you have to end up going that route anyway. On top of the fact that this one versus the other one, like the other one only turns into a creature, makes a token and emblems, which obviously isn't what you really care about. This one you care about more, but still that 4-mana Gideon's a really powerful planeswalker, even still in this format. Sticking with the trend of very powerful 3-mana planeswalkers, Narset Parter Veils and Teferi Time Raveler both create miserable gameplay, which obviously means that they're very powerful and you should be playing 4 full copies of them. Please don't argue with me. These cards are just very good. As we were talking about earlier, the Narset lock with Gaia Reach Sanitarium, one in the main deck, one on the side that you can tutor up for, locking your opponent out of draw steps, making it so that they can't really play Magic anymore, is very powerful. And just eventually you get to the point where like you slam a Planeswalker that your opponent obviously is never going to be able to deal with, if you can clear their board, or if you can just again stop them from having really any meaningful permanence on the battlefield. You win the game. You actually just win the game. Maybe not on the spot, more than likely on the spot, because your opponent should concede. But if they want you to really beat them, I mean, you just find like Chandra, Jace, Teferi, Elspeth, and just win the game that way. Time Raveler, just a very tempo-y card, and also just lets you play like instant speed Supreme Verdict, instant speed Deafening Clarion. Is very backbreaking for some decks. They just kind of like play out their hand. They have to try to beat you before you really get set up and everything. And on turn 4, you Supreme Verdict them at instant speed. Really kind of takes the wind out of their sails, and just gives you an insane amount of tempo and like virtual card advantage for the fact that like you 4-for-1 them, 3-for-1 them. Heck, even like that 4-for-1 is just very good. Chandra, Jace, powerful 4-mana planeswalkers. Chandra like took over Kaladesh Standard when she was printed. Jace, Architect of Thought, was like a really good card advantage engine, and just a really powerful way to protect you and your planeswalkers as well. So kind of 2 4-mana cards that like dominated the standard they were in, or at least are really like a focal point of like the decks that they were played in when they were in standard. So getting their fair shake here in Pioneer. Teferi Hero Dominaria, a 5-mana planeswalker that feels like a 3-mana planeswalker because of that +1, in conjunction with like Teferi Time Raveler or Narset Parter Veils. You can really just like have turns where like even if you play him on turn 6 and you hit your land drops or whatever, being able to have like 2 Teferis in play where you can just leave up Deafening Clarion if you need to. Just really powerful, really good. Still really good in a format that has like Return to Ravnica, or all the way back to Return to Ravnica. This card is still a very powerful Planeswalker. And of course, Elspeth Sun's Champion, the Planeswalker everybody fell in love with when this card was in Standard. The either the bane or like the love of people when this card was in Standard. I mean, just a 6 mana like +1 make 3/1/1s, like protects herself amazingly with a plus ability. Does it even better with her minus. Just blows up all the big things. You're not playing any creatures, so you really don't care. And then the one creature you do play, Fave Wishes, obviously just doesn't get taken out by Elspeth, so really good there. And then of course the emblem, which can literally just be game winning. You just plus plus plus. You have now have nine 3/3 flying creatures. That can just probably come over and win the game. So yeah, that's a lot of like what the main purpose, the main engine of playing this deck. And of course, there's times where you're not gonna have Fires of Invention. There's people that are playing Assassin's Trophy, um, other people that might be playing Casualties of War, things like that, where they might be able to bounce it, destroy it, exile it, whatever. You need to be able to cast these spells. Playing 26 lands because you definitely want to hit your land drops with Fires of Invention, and then obviously being able to cast your Planeswalkers or board wipes, rats, whatever, on curve. Has 2 Hardicurin, which is kind of sweet because this is also just another win condition that doesn't need creatures. You just crew them with removing loyalty from your planeswalkers to just really kind of get it going, which is great. Like, this card's super aggressive, really hard to deal with. Obviously, it gets dealt with by Fatal Push, but that still really powerful. Every reason to play it. Detention Sphere is like a catch-all, which is kind of sweet. So the lands, this is like pretty, I would say pretty basic. Like playing some number of temples. They're just lands that are essentially like ways to dig you past lands if you don't need lands, help you find lands if you need them. Just great lands, love the cycle. Some untapped lands that don't cause you to lose life, like Silver Falls, not Mystic Monastery. Mystic Monastery, like a great, just like one of card, just taps for all your colors. No reason to play more than one of it. Really good. Interplanar Beacon, a way to gain life and really stunt the aggro decks. Where if you just play a beacon and then play a Time Raveler and bounce their creature, like you gain a life and you set them back on their board. Like, that's really good. Glacial Fortress, Gyre Reach Sanitarium, as we were talking about earlier, just like a potential way to like lock your opponent out of the game, digs you closer towards like answers. And then a Castle Vantress, which I'm surprised only playing 1. I'd probably play 2. Maybe you could cut like you could potentially cut a temple. Maybe you could even cut like the Mystic Monastery for it. But I also like the Monastery because it taps for all your colors, things like that. But playing like just 1 castle seems weird to me. I would probably want to play 2 because this card is just so good, especially when you have an active Fires of Invention, because you could just activate this on your upkeep, make sure that you draw gas or something in this. And that's really it, just for what's here. A few things that I kind of like thought of like as I'm kind of going over this. Interesting that the basically main source of like card draw or like card advantage in this deck is up to Fave Wishes and the 3 Teferi Hero Dominaria, the Jace Architect of Thought, and the Chandra. Even though like 17 Planeswalkers, I feel like is probably pretty right for a Super Friends deck. That this kind of doesn't spread out more into like playing like Drawn from Dreams or even like Dig Through Time. Probably less on Dig Through Time because like you can't really utilize the Delve on it, and then just having a 4 mana card that you can cast for free after you cast a Fires of Invention, just to kind of like dig deeper for some of these cards. It's that's kind of weird, an interesting choice, but I guess when you have Torture Defiance, Architect of Thought, and even like Teferi Hero Dominaria, Teferi and Narset as kind of ways to like dig for some of this stuff, it's probably fine, but also still really weird to me, especially like with the evolution of the Fires decks in the Standard, and even some of the ones in Historic, kind of playing these like sorcery like card advantage engines instead of like relying on like the Planeswalkers as like the card advantage engine. And again, the land base probably fine. The one of Gaia Reach is like your only real like colorless land, you know, is definitely fine just because of the lockout potential, having the one main deck copy and having the one on the sideboard. That being said, maybe you can get the Gaia Reach Sanitarium for a second Castle Vantress. You have a decent number of like double blue spells and just blue spells in the deck in general, where playing the castle feels like it's kind of free, and just having like that extra potential of being able to just fix your draws and everything with the scry, you know, just very underutilized, and I think very underlooked card when it was first spoiled, and now people are starting to give it some respect, but I don't think it gets enough credit and respect for what it actually does. You know, I like it. I'm very high on the card, obviously. And that's really gonna be it for Fire's Super Friends. This deck is hot. It looks sweet. It looks like it's a lot of fun. I kind of want to try it out because I have the Narsets, the Teferis, like the Chandras, heroes, just a lot of like the Planeswalkers, like the Fires, things like that. Like I'm really like in love with this deck. I like what it's doing. I like everything that's like trying to put together, and with the format looking like it could potentially slow down with the copter bannings, and then the banning of like Field of the Dead and Once Upon a Time. You know, the format definitely seems like it's trying to slow down. So being able to play this like kind of slowish, mid-rangey like Planeswalker control deck might be all right in the format, and might be all right to like try to locking your opponents out and things like that. You know, but that's really, I'm gonna leave it up to you guys. What you think of like the Pioneer format? Please be sure to like leave comments, questions, concerns, anything, suggestions about this deck or maybe another deck that you want to see in the future for Pioneer. Probably gonna go over some modern deck lists too on Thursday, just to kind of keep fresh, keep things going on modern. You know, even though it's not really getting as much love as I think it deserves. It's still, the format's great. It's still very diverse, and people just kind of want to throw it off to the side and shrug off like whatever. You know, it's like a 3-4 deck format. No, it's still very much 10, 15, 20, possibly even 30 deck format. You know, that has every possibility of just spiking any sort of like moderately sized to like big tournament here in the near future, and as we get ready to go into 2020 with all these fun, exciting new events that'll be coming up between the SCG Tour and the Grand Prix slash Magic Fest slash MCQs slash whatever you want to call them. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Any comments, questions, concerns about this deck or any deck that you find on my channel, or any cool decks that you want to just like point out to me and link me to that you want me to check out, I would like greatly appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like on the video, share it with your friends. You know, get these cool decks out there, really get people playing this Pioneer format, because Pioneer is sweet, and with the bannings and everything, you know, especially since we didn't have a banning this past Monday, the format looks like it's kind of safe to get into and kind of buy these like borderline like broken slash really powerful cards, and not have to worry about them getting immediately banned like we have for some of these other cards. But yeah, that's gonna be again, that's gonna be it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.